Hello? Hello?
Yep, we can hear you, Stephen. We can hear you, but there's a lot
Hello?
of background noise.
Oh, you can hear me, right?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, because the last meeting, it seems like I spoke and then no one responded. So I was like, okay, it's probably something.
Oh, we indeed did not hear your voice at all last meeting.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So I think that was like the thing. But anyway, it's okay. Yeah, so the last meeting went overtime. That's why we're a little late starting, joining. And let's see. Okay, let's get started. It's like 4 minutes over, right? So this is the SIG release, Nashville SIG release meetings for March 6, 2023. And today's main agenda is really what's the hour plan is. So I mean, John asked me to do a PR for what he actually did for the subgroups and things. I was in the middle of writing that last night, and then I wasn't able to finish for now. But then I think Arwen and others has put up about 18 issues on SIG release branch or repo. So we can probably get to that. I think Arwen also organized them into tagged them into areas.
Well, Stephen, maybe if you could explain what the areas are and
yeah.
I think most of the folks, well, maybe not, I don't know. What we did in SIG automation is, let me put my camera on, we split into 3 groups and we defined a scope for each group, and we defined we specified somebody to lead that, and those groups can get their own Slack channel, and they'll sort of get, the idea is they can execute more independently without having to have huge meetings of the entire team. There's a smaller group here, maybe than in SIG automation. So I think, Stephen, can you just sort of explain what the groups you were thinking of doing were, and your plan around that? You're muted now. Oh, okay. You're muted, Stephen.
I can cover for Stephen.
Yeah, I can. I for a moment I couldn't unmute when I share, which is very interesting. So now if I don't share.
Oh, that's, yeah. You have to, when you say share a tab, there's a little checkbox underneath the list of tabs. You have to uncheck that.
I see.
Or it shares the audio from the tab, and yeah, super annoying.
Yeah, it's very interesting features to be by default.
Exactly, the default is absolutely wrong. Yeah.
So basically for R1, so SIG release could have all miscellaneous load of things, but then there are basically 3 major areas, right? One of this is release management in general. So the branch strategies, there are tagging branches. There are making sure that the dates are met. There are things to decide whether or not we're going to drop features and things like that. And there is obviously the second major area, which I would imagine most of SIG3 would be doing, that is the test infrastructure. This is going, we already decided this is going to inherit from what we've done on the ONE Summit for that setup, and then kind of evolve it into what we can actually do. And then all the tools that are needed for development tools, actually. That's including actually today, for example, Vim just talked about a package construction tools. We've talked about SDKs and things like that moving forward. At this point, I don't think any of those may make it into R1. This is not planned, although we can actually write about it. But at this point, the 2 major areas is really process management not release management and the test infrastructure. So there are currently about 18 issues filed by this. The release management part, I don't think we'll need a lot of people, although it is an area. So my thinking is we need maybe appointing or having volunteers who know how to who want to do them, 2 people to be our release manager basically for R1. So there will be, so these people would be those individuals would be looking at branching, making sure Prowl is actually, if someone requests creating a new repo, making sure Prowl is running, making sure that unit tests can run on the Prowl pre-submit test, helping developers to actually get to that level, and ensuring that if any tagging and things like that needs to happen. I mean, there are regular tagging of individual component owners that can do it on the branch. There's nothing to do with us. There's also a released global Nephew specific tagging that we need to do. That's basically based on data, based on integration test. So that would also be managed by these release management managers. So I don't look for like 5, 6, 10 and volunteers for release management. Probably no more than 2, my guess is. And the second area, test infrastructure, anything going from evolving our VMs to bringing in unit test frameworks. If we want a unified unit test framework across the board, at least making sure that if we are bringing different unit test framework, which is not recommended, but then if we do have different ones that they actually do run on Prowl, and then making sure that we can still have the same validations and test reporting in place. We have tools to monitor for tools to actually calculate the test coverage, and then in its community we have to decide. I'm pretty sure as we go to release, that requirement will relax a lot, but then as a community we have to decide what kind of test coverage we would need for us to say this is release quality, and then automatically hook that up with Prowl so that we can do that for testing periodically on integrations. We actually have, so integration tests, some level of integration test. Unit test obviously is provided purely by the developers of the features. So SIG2 folks will be providing unit tests. We just have to ensure that they can run as part of pre-submit, and then the test is recorded. Integration test is across the board. Different components owners may get together and do integration tests. I think for SIG3, our responsibility is to ensure that, well, we do want to build some integration test cases according to the user journey as proposed by SIG1. So we would have to ensure as release goes, they do fit into the user journey. Again, SIG1 and SIG2 and SIG3 are basically the same set of people. It's not like there's really a delineations of what it is. In this case, in terms of having areas, it's basically more like appointing responsible individuals so that they can actually do. So there was someone other than John Meevan and to oversee areas. Go ahead, Vish.
No, for the integration tests, we don't call it out as a separate thing, right? We do need integration tests. When you are doing a coding, when you're making some function calls or whatever API calls to other modules, so as part of our PR review process, we would have identified that. Since
so pre-submit test is something you can test on non-functional capabilities. So we don't, at this point anyway, and then I'm open for people to actually interpret it. At this point, we don't expect every single commit to trigger a creation of our VMs and then do a functional test, right? So obviously that's not going to happen. It is possible, although we have to talk about this moving forward, and it's obviously part of the test infrastructure lead, whoever wants you to do that, to actually make that to kind of drive that also, is that it is possible that we have a long running set of VM topology of things. Even then, I don't think every commit is going to trigger this. So that could be one of our individual, hourly, daily tests where we gather a set of check-ins, or we have major check-ins, we make sure that we can trigger that test. But then pre-submits obviously is going to just be some sort of unit test code framework to ensure that the unit test that you write actually would pass. And then all subsequent check-in to that repo would also check all those pre-submit tests. Is that your question, or did I say something else?
No, I think you answered more than that. In general, I was trying to say that as part of the PR review process, we will have identified that this particular PR that is going in needs integration tests. Right?
I mean, that depends on the framework. I think that's the question for Arwen. Is it possible to, on a per PR basis, we'll say this PR cannot go in unless we run through some sort of integration test, and assuming our integration is automated. Is it possible? Arwen? For PR?
Sorry, the question is for every PR.
If for particular PR, not for every PR, but then if for particular PR, if we suddenly deem this is necessary to run some sort of integration test to ensure that it doesn't break other people.
I mean, so there is
there something that Cloud can do to gate the commit to make sure that this, let's say we automated it, which is a completely different problem, but let's say that integration is automated, can we gate that commit on a per PR basis?
Right.
No, pretty finely granular, but yeah, go ahead.
Just
Sorry.
take a step back on that, right? Like, so we'll do two things, right? Like once we have browse set up the way we want it to be, like there is notion of pre-submit test and then post-submit test, right? Like we'll have both. Pre-submit test would be things like unit test, for example, and
right.
those have to run before your PR is even validated, because only after pre-submit test runs, then your PR is even valid for submission, right? Then
yeah. So this is unit test. So if a particular PR, we say that it has the IPAM CL changes, so it affects some IPAM injectors that sits on a different repo, which I'm not sure whether that's the case. But let's say that's, for example, do we gate it such that it would ensure that that change is also being reflected already by the other components? Is that something that Proud can do, or is something that human would have to actually ensure this is the case?
Right. No, the way I was thinking at least was we have unit test, obviously. And besides that, we will have a periodic integration test. Like every 1 hour, we run periodic integration test. And if there is a breakage, we should be able to root cause. So in that 1 hour, whatever CRs that went in, right, that whatever pull requests were merged, those were the root cause, right? And then from that, we can triage. And
so one thing we can do is basically, if for a PR that is huge and it affects other components, we can basically commit through pre-submit and then manually trigger the integration test run.
Yeah, that should be possible. Yes.
As opposed to
yeah, I think so. I think we should be able to manually. We have to figure out a way, but I don't see why we couldn't.
Yeah.
Do that.
Okay. Great.
So the
Balaji, your hand's been up for a while, so go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah, a couple of things. One thing is I have to drop out in the next few minutes because I have to start driving. That's why I just want to put a couple of points. So Arvind, I put this board or the task together. So at this point of time, I just wanted to highlight that we have only two things. We have not created any particular issues for any particular integration testing. So integration testing specific issues we will raise that is very domain specific, that based on the components and stuff, and then probably those things will come when we actually recognize the components and the relationships between them and the scope of testing. So that's one thing I wanted to highlight. This does not have that. The second thing this may not have is there anything installer related issues. Whether that could be documentation or putting the scripts together for any reference installation procedures. That's also not reflected in these issues at this point of time, but we will add those as well. I think those are the two things I wanted to highlight. So that's why you will see areas only in either in the test infrastructure or in the process management. So coming back to the, yeah, go ahead, somebody else.
So sorry, Balaji. Sorry, finish your thought. Sorry, go ahead. Okay,
so that is that, and then coming back to Vish's question is whether a PR, how a PR should be managed. My opinion is this. I mean, obviously, a PR cannot go in without unit tests. That we all know that, and then then as like Arvind said, as part of post saying, whatever the enabled integration tests may and will run. Obviously, I think we can cherry pick. We all, at that point of time, initially, it may be all integration tests. So what PR will ensure or should ensure is that obviously unit test is run, your component it's fine, it has coverage, and it's not breaking existing functionalities. If Wish is also asking, a PR should also accompany integration tests associated with that, then I think that may be slowing process down. I think the integration it should not break the existing ones, but the new integration test, I'm not sure whether that should come as the PR or that should come as a later step. When I say integration test, the integration test that is affecting the new functionality. Obviously, it should not break the existing functionality. That will make sure through regression. That's the comment I have here. Thank you. Go ahead.
Okay, so yeah, quick thing not necessarily on this topic in general, like on the test infra, right? The main areas that I see is the whole CI/CD pipeline part, right? Like there's a bunch of things, the issues that we have filed here, which is all Proud related, right? A lot of Proud related work, and then also integration test bed is a significant piece of work, like Steven mentioned. And besides this, the other thing, the release management part of it, right, is mostly gatekeeping stuff, right? Like we need to make sure we define a clear process so that there's no confusion on like what a developer needs to do, the contribution guidelines, what happens to a PR, basically life cycle of a PR, and then the release process, all that, right? Like gatekeeping, and also I think we also have issue for contribution guidelines and stuff, right? Yeah. So there is a good chunk of work there because that team has to make sure there is enough documentation for onboarding. It doesn't have to be that team alone, but they can take SIG automation's help, but they have to be the driving force for that, right? Like, so that is another chunk of work. On the integration part that Bala was mentioning, I just wanted to add that, so let's say someone is touching a controller and that in turn impacts the APIs that it interfaces with the other controllers, right? Then that team, I expect them to ideally create an integration test right out of the gate. If not, at least file an issue to say integration test is required. And then it can come in a little bit later. Because as Bala mentioned, if API is not compatible, it'll break existing integration tests. So we'll catch it then. If not, it can wait. It doesn't have to bog down the process. Yeah, that's all I had to say. I think John had his hand raised. John, please go ahead.
Oh yeah, I put it down. I think it's I think it's already been covered. I'm fine.
Okay. So I didn't even know what was the train of thoughts actually after that discussion. So yeah, so integration tests, some part of integration tests will, well, we have to ensure some integration tests coverage are covered, would be able to cover all the use cases that we actually wanted. So I think that part is either SIG3 is trying to ensure, or actually would have to have a team to basically build that. And going back to this.
So on that point, Stephen, integration test, ideally, all the folks who are like SIG automation should write the integration test, right? That integration test infrastructure, if you will should be done by SIG3, but the integration tests themselves should be written by whoever is writing the code, right? Like for that part.
Yeah, but then so intercomponents integration testing is something that either we have to enforce. Right. Obviously, we shouldn't have to write it per se.
Right.
I mean, right. If SIG3 and SIG2 people are completely independent, and people are very focused on just basically looking at one SIG, then sure. But then that's not the case. Like SIG3 and SIG2 are basically the same set of people. So I would imagine it will be kind of getting into, in terms of what we are responsible for, is to ensure that for a use case, those integration tests exist, because we release scaling, right? So we are gating release to ensure that for everything that we said we support is actually supported. Otherwise, we can't release it.
Right.
And if you're taking more organizational approach, system level testing sometimes have been done by a different organization than the development. So you can make that argument that we could do it, but I'm not advocating it one side or another, because obviously, again, we did pretty much the same set of people. so I would hope it's fully covered by SIG2, but by developers, not SIG2, SIG3. Let's not just delineate that also. But by the individual developers who are coordinating with even things from a different components, across different components, they would actually coordinate and create integrations. And then we just have to ensure that the integration test can run.
Right. I mean, I think SIG3 mainly needs to do the gatekeeping to make sure there is enough integration test coverage by looking at what
according
issues.
to a use case, yes, according to
Yes.
the release cases.
Exactly. Yeah. That's the SIG3's, I think, charter. And then, yeah, some members from SIG3 could potentially work on it as well if they so choose to. But I'm just saying that like it doesn't solely fall on SIG3. It's mostly gatekeeping and then ensuring we hold the quality of the release, right? Yeah.
Right. So I would imagine the second area is the big area. It's part of the spill off of the second area. I think Bala, who just dropped off, but then when he actually commented on the other documents that I think all SIG2 and 3 both maintain in terms of the suggesting a list of areas, is that, oh, do we need any integration installation scripts, which is, I guess, fall under tools. So SIG3 would do. Yes, and then I would hope that it's probably part of the infrastructure area, because to set up the test, we would have to invoke some sort of initialization installation scripts to make sure that the test environment has all the dependent pieces already running. So I'm sort of hoping this is kind of something we can.
We lost you. So
yeah, no. I mean, I was looking at the chat. So Wim said something. Yeah. So I hope that as part of the integration test setup or testbed setup, we would have more official installation and initialization scripts that will be generated as part of that. So we may be able to just use that as part of the more official installation.
Okay. So there's things like Docker Compose and Podman that you can always use, for integration, because I mean, I'm using a previous example that I work in a different project where you actually have a certain component running in a certain container, like for example, database, and your actual code running in another container, and there's an interaction needed. There are multiple ways to do it. You can, Docker Compose is one of them that I used in the past. Equivalent, on Podman as well, that can be used. And in certain cases, if you need to use CLAB, the container lab, then we probably need that inside of a virtual machine. So looks like we can use a combination of those things. I think it can be it's doable, is what I feel.
Okay. Yeah. So we did something for ONE Summit to, for example, set up Porch and things, the dependent components, and install them as part of the Ansible, I believe. Once after, even the VMs, and obviously everything is not set up by Ansible, but those obviously are not part of the official, other than the sandbox, those are not official installations. But we want to publish official installations for potential users if they want to instantiate, if they want to, if they need to, actually they would need to create a initial environment, a management cluster setup. So we could, obviously those are all, practically speaking, those are all, other than the Git repo, which users would actually just create on their own. Most of the other components are Kubernetes components, pods, Kubernetes applications. So we should, well, I mean, even if we just published a YAML of some sort for them to instantiate, that would be great. But then obviously we may want to do something a little more sophisticated, a little better, so that they don't have to do their own kube control in this case. But yeah, so that's one of the Bala suggestions. I think it falls under us on SIG3. But then I think if we want to have an automated test bed to be set up, we would have to have something similar anyway. It's just that we make one of those more official, so we can publish that as part of a release. That would be awesome. On Vim's questions, do we have people? I was going to reach out to folks to see if they're interested to take on the lead roles. I'll probably do that offline instead of like publicly announced to everyone in here.
So we also think that we need to follow. I mean, when I say we, the SIG release also feels that we need to follow. They need to follow a similar approach like SIG automation. Okay.
Well, I mean, so an area lead is,
I mean, we have a lot less areas. I mean, and then each area has, well, you could make an argument that test infra probably has as much work as any of the area. Release management, as I said, it's probably no more than 2 people, more like a backup to each other. And for our one, because of the rush of times, we're not really doing a lot more. And SDK type stuff, obviously, we're not going to do. So yeah. So the idea would be having small focus area. I mean, over ONE Summit time, there were 6 people, contributing to the test infra. But anything from even creating all the gig repos for the workshop, and that is very focused and works out extremely well. So right now we have to make that obviously much more official and much more sophisticated, and then the hope is to have a focus group that will be looking into that. Dinesh?
Hi, Stephen. I just wanted to bring an idea of bringing in offline installer for Nephew. We were having this discussion with John on the chat room, but was wondering what is the thoughts on SIG, what's the thoughts from SIG release on this? Because often many vendors and telecom operators have data centers that have very restricted access to the internet. So often installer is always a handy way of deploying and
Right. So that would be great. That definitely will welcome contributions on that. We never made the ONE Summit workshop, but we made it into something that hopefully can download and play with. And there are many various different ways to deploy it now. There's a Docker containers that can have everything. The different OS supports, but then the native Ansible requires GKE or GCE actually, or GCP. But then I don't think that's any. I think that works on anything now, so to speak. So, but then sure, I mean, if we have a offline installer, and able to, well, I mean, offline installer means that you still would be able to would have to download things somewhere first. But then, so what is the idea would be everything is already bundled into a tar zip, and then the offline controller carries all the binaries with them.
That's really so. Yeah, so we have a similar offline installer for other projects like ONAP as well. So like what you mentioned, like, so we bundle all of them, package them together. Once we download it into a system where we have internet, and then we move around to other data centers internally, places, the servers that have internal labs or servers that have restricted internet access, and we just run the deployer. We just run the installer script. So everything, it is also you should also be able to connect to some internal Git organization repositories, for us to carry on with other steps. But yeah, that's the idea. Like so.
Okay. No. So that's definitely something good to have. Absolutely.
Ganesh, on what is that built, by the way? Sorry to jump in. On what is that build? Do they use? So, for example, I did recently. I have something. I did not share it yet. But, I used Packer from HashiCorp to basically package the whole thing in one thing, and you deploy it. The thing is that, for example, you can have a flavor for VirtualBox. I build a flavor for Google. You can build a flavor for AWS. So you have to build type of that. So I was just wondering on what I think what that would be based, or what ONAP used and what basis they had to build that. You
Okay.
know?
See, from what I'm aware, in ONAP, it's all just containers running, right? So they have basically like downloaded all the Docker images, and in some places they're also building something on top. So I'll have to check again, but in most of the cases, in ONAP there are multiple projects. So I have used offline installer to deploy some of these projects, which are mostly filled with Docker containers. But there are other projects that have some binaries and dependency building and etc. I haven't explored those, but I'll have a look at them to see how they have done it.
Because today your biggest problem right now with the installation is the proxy. I do know that someone in my team tried it through the proxy of within Nokia, right? So build it really in a private thing, and he succeeded from what I understood. So we have to look in. So I think you have a specific issue that we have to sort out on what that is. So we need to dig into that a little bit, I think, to understand a bit better what your issue is that you are facing into. Yeah, I've been traveling, so it's a bit hard for me to follow up at the moment, but if someone else can have spent some time, but so there is a specific issue with respect to proxies, I think, for you, right, at the moment?
Yeah, thank you on that, Wim. Yes, it was mostly on the search. So the VMs the VM was not able to make any HTTPS communication. So unless it is like forced to use in secure way. But my suggestion today is for the release 1 in general. So people, but so anyway, like coming back to that. So I've added a new variable that user can pass to say that force insecure for all the HTTPS or TLS verification needed. So I've just made a PR on that so that people who are having issues, in addition to proxies, many organizations also have like certificate. They don't. There is a private certificate.
No, for sure.
Yeah,
which is
so
good.
that would help.
We can improve for sure.
Sounds good. Yeah, thank you.
No, I was raising my hand, Stephen, for something else actually, but sorry to jump in. My question was more on the people, whether we have maybe any candidate on this call, because most of the time these roles so the people on the call are typically the ones at the moment trying to lead. So maybe if there are volunteers on the call to lead some of these roles, it would be great if people would say, yeah, I'm going for it, or I'm calling for help, if that helps. I don't know. Yeah.
I can help coordinate the test infra part, but may not have all the answers, so would need.
No, but see, I think Aravind, at least the way I see it, or at least that's how I understand the sub project that we do in SIG 2 at the moment, is that okay, there's going to be a leader who do the coordination and try to set up the meeting and make sure that we get the ball rolling, right? That is the do. But of course, there will be many people involved to realize the activities that need to happen, right? So what you need is someone who is going to, let's say, lead the pack and drive us into a direction that all benefit from. Of course, we need to have other people to help us to make that happen for sure, right? And so, but we need someone who says, okay, I will try. Of course, if there is nobody's going to help me, okay, then of course you cannot succeed. But that's part of what we have to try to accomplish at the moment, I believe, is trying to have what I call divide and conquer, is have like various sub-project leaders that try to drive a certain aspect. And then, of course, we need to have them supported by a set of people, hopefully, that can make that happen, right? That's kind of what we are probably trying to achieve at the moment, or at least that's my understanding.
Yeah, and I'll say, so this is why basically similar reason I had my hand up when was like, they can drive it, but they also can say, hey, I don't have enough support, right? And they can talk to the SIG leads, and the SIG leads can go to the TSC even and say, hey, we can't make the dates that the community is targeting because we don't have enough support in this area. You know, can you go back to your organizations and try to bring in some additional help? So definitely this is a shepherd position we're looking for. And we want to get the team set up right away, because right now we're holding off on sending out a note for the SIG automation teams for people to self-sort, because we know there's a lot of overlap, and we don't want to be like, hey, here are the 3 teams, and then a week later say, here are 2 more teams. So we want to say, you know, here are all the different teams. And then the idea is that as people self-sort into them, but they can sort into more than one if they want. You know, then the role of that shepherd or leader that Wim's talking about is to say, okay, I've got 5 people. I'm going to talk to them. I have an idea of my scope and what I need to get done. Who are these people? What is their backgrounds? What are their skill levels in those areas of our scope? And how much time can they commit? And then they have to make an evaluation. This is that role, is they have to make an evaluation. Can we, you know, is that sufficient? And what can we get done with that based on what we need to get done? And then communicate that across the rest of the community. And if they need help, first place to do is just to call to the rest of the community and say, hey, I don't think we have enough people here. Can somebody else get involved? But, you know, so yeah, you don't have to know everything, for sure. None of us knows everything. You just have to coordinate folks. So yeah. Stephen, is the teams, these process what are the teams that are specified now? Test infra, process management, I see on the screen. Were there others? Was there a third one, or are there going to be 2 teams?
I think release management was the third, but it was a bit lightweight, it seems. Or is that?
Yeah, so test infra has like a few things, right? Like we need to work on integration test bed and also everything CI/CD related, right? That's one. And the other one is basically everything that goes with process and release management, basically. Okay. And also, how do you onboard developers, right? Like, how do you, I mean, we have to work on contribution guidelines and what is the process, so that like when people merge PRs, they know what to expect, right? Like what tests will run. And for example, if somebody is creating a PR and they have a unit test, right, they are writing, they need to know how to write a proud job for it, right? For example, starting with that, like they need to define all the process so that people know what to do. And also gatekeeping, like we discussed before, right? So that's the second.
I hope most PRs don't require a separate project. The projects most will cover, will run all the unit tests or whatever, and there'll be a set of integration tests that either get run with each PR, or I think, like you said earlier, periodic. It's really just a determination based upon cost and time for CI to run.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. So
there's mainly 2 roles here, right? Sorry. Yeah.
So what I want to do is send out a note, a form. Well, let me know what you all think about this. Maybe it's not the best idea. I'm thinking we send out a form that says, here are the 5 or 6 groups. Here's their scope, and check a box if you're interested in participating in that one. And that's it. Like, so we'll just get an idea. And each team is going to end up setting up. My intention is, right now we have 3 meetings a week between SIG. Well, I guess the SIG releases right now every other week, but it was going to go to weekly. And like, that's I'd like, personally, I'd like to move to 1 all SIG meeting for each SIG, and then the sub teams can have their own meetings, however many they think is necessary. That's what I'm thinking.
I agree.
And
and
we can pick the time of that meeting that's convenient to those people. The only constraint we have is that we're using a single Zoom account, which means we can't have overlapping meetings. So we can't all take 9 a.m.
Which is fine, I think, because I'm expecting some people who want to go to cover more meetings potentially, but okay, there will be a limit, yeah, potentially. But I think it's not a problem, right? That you cannot have all.
Yeah, we'll just make the best of it. Yeah. We can probably always get another Zoom account if we need to, but it would be kind of a pain.
Yeah. But one slot we can already take from the, I don't know which one you want to keep, the Wednesday or the Tuesday, probably Wednesday, I guess. That was the original.
Yeah, I'm thinking we keep the Wednesday as the regular full SIG meeting, but then the Tuesday could be reused.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, so I guess what I needed to send that out is just an email. We don't need the full PR. I just need an email saying, here are the groups, here's their scope, here are the skills needed in each one. And that's sufficient. And then I can put together a Google form and send it out to both SIGs or the whole dev list.
Yeah. And it would be
So
good.
can somebody get that to me today, like earlier rather than later? Because we have a meeting tomorrow with SIG Automation. I'd prefer to be able to, I guess it's maybe too short to get a lot of, we'll see how many responses we get, but I'd like to get the ball rolling.
But I think also if we have a sub-project leader, right, it would already help, in my view. If we have people who can volunteer, then maybe it will help already. And we will probably also create the Slack channels for it, I guess.
Yeah, so who was it? Somebody volunteered, was that Vish I heard, or I can't tell who's speaking, and so it's just my voice recognition.
No, I mean, this is the first time I'm hearing about the sub-project teams for, for the release team, right? So in general, I was thinking, that is why I was asking some clarifying questions about, so one, we are looking at this list of things out here, right? That has been already planned, and actually these tasks are listed out. I definitely agree that having sub-project helps with accountability, right? In general, like, even though we are leading by influence, most of it, it's at least the things you're saying about resources and all. I'm trying to still grapple with those areas and trying to see where I can pitch in, because I know I can pitch in multiple areas too if I have to. So
yeah, I guess no, I was trying to remember who. I think it was actually Arvind who piped up and said something. So I'm not trying to put you on the spot, Vish.
No worries. I mean, I'm willing to help in our areas where I can. For example, I've had some extensive experience working on OVN Kubernetes, and prior to that in IBM VPC, where they use Go a lot, and use there for Golang testing and all that stuff. Definitely, I look forward to contributing what I know.
So John, yeah, to your question, I think I was just volunteering for the test infra part.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
Arvind,
process management, test infra, and release management, we said. So we don't need to pick them here, but like we need to pick them soon. So we can, I don't know how, it's up to this SIG, how you all want to choose them. We just nominated people and people got approved in SIG Automation, right? Like everybody said fine to the PR. So as far as I'm concerned, that was approval. So, whatever process you want to use is up to you, but I'm just iterating. I need to get the ball rolling, and I don't want to push forward on the SIG Automation stuff without being able to include these other groups. So if Stephen or Arvind or somebody can send me a note with those, what your groups are, what the scope of each group is, the basic skills needed in each today, sooner rather than later, that would be really helpful to get the ball moving forward.
My point is a little bit, on the sub-project. Yeah, sorry, I raised my hand. But the sooner you have a sub-project leader for these things, let's say you have tomorrow 5 people. Of course, we can ask whether some of these people want to be the sub-project leader, of course. But by having it, you have a person who is going to drive the ball, if you will, right? So and that is potentially important for people to understand, because one of the first things that you have to do is probably explain what has to happen in the group. I'm imagining. So you need someone who is going to be, let's say, coordinating that a little bit and driving the team, and then keep the ball going and keep the spirit into it. And of course, the idea is then to attract even more people if we need to, right? And yeah. And I'm expecting that the people for the leaders are coming from the people on the call most of the time, because typically,
Yeah, that's
or
who
at
shows
least-
up. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's open source, man. You show up. The people who run the world are the ones who show up.
So if it helps, maybe what I can do is put together I don't know, John, a document maybe, if that will help. And
I just
kind of,
need, so ultimately we should have a PR in the, and I think Stephen was going to do that. He didn't have a chance to this weekend, but I'm sure he will soon. There's going to be a PR in the governance repo, like I did for SIG automation, that defines. All I did was copy the charter out of the community doc, the scope of work for the SIG, and then I put down, okay, we're breaking that scope into these areas for the different sub projects. Yeah, we can't hear you, Stephen. Maybe stop displaying that and it'll work again. No, still can't hear. Oh.
I put John's document in the chat, Arvind, for you if you are.
Yeah, we still can't hear Stephen, unfortunately.
As Stephen said, he started the repo.
Okay.
So
yeah. So anyway, okay, thank you, Stephen. That's great. Yeah, and so then I want to send out, like I said, a Google form people can check off their names on a list. That's all. Just so we start to self-sort, and then the leader of that group can just reach out to those people and say, and add them to the Slack channel and just say, hey, when's good for you to meet, right? Like, and just start to drive the process.
yeah.
So Arvind, were you saying something? Did we cut you off when?
no, because I mean, I wasn't sure who was doing it, so I was just asking. I'm happy to like clarify. Looks like anyway, Stephen is already doing that, right? Like clarify two roles, I mean, just to reiterate, two broad groups, right? Test infrastructure, which goes anything with tooling, PROW, integration testbed, and all that will go into one. And the second bucket is release/process management, which is, and we can call out a list of things and the skills, right? I was saying I'm happy to put together that, but if Stephen is already doing it, then I guess we don't have to, repeat.
Okay, so
we close loop on that, and one of us will do it, right? Like you will get it, John, like sooner.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, let me close the loop on that with Stephen offline.
Thank you. Okay, and then Stephen was asking if there's any more topics. So I guess since he's having trouble, are there any more topics, or are we all set here?
So just to be clear, John, like after we, let's say, decide these two groups, how would we select the members of the group? So you will be sending out a survey with these two groups and people can sign up?
Yeah.
Okay. It looks like there are no other topics, right? I don't see anybody's.
Okay, so I guess we're all done then.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Thanks all. Bye-bye.